I'm going to see if you can figure out who said this. Creativity is universal and can be found in places we will not expect to find it. Perseverance and passion are essential to nurturing that creative ability. So what educational mastermind said that? Give you a second to think about it. And it was actually Kelvin Dough. And Kelvin, who you've already been introduced to, said this when he was 17 years old, so I think a couple years after the video that you watched. And these are the things that really stuck out for me: creativity, perseverance, passion, and nurturing. And I wanted to talk about that a little bit here as we discuss, what makes the student journey really meaningful. What makes a learning opportunity meaningful for these kids? And we're going to try to incorporate into lesson planning concepts that are perplexing, intellectually stimulating, necessary, and opportunities to create ownership. Remember, I said one of my favorite, yes, this is my lunchbox, and this is, of course, my favorite movie of all time, or series of movies. And think about Luke in this. If you've never seen it, then it might not mean that much to you, but let's look here for a second at Chris Vogler's book, The Writer's Journey. And he talks specifically about the hero's journey, which you can see here. The ordinary world, call to adventure, the refusal of the call, the meeting with the mentor, crossing the threshold, tests allies and enemies, the approach, ordeal, death, and rebirth. Going on, you can see that this sort of mirrors Luke's journey. If we look at it in another way, then we have here just a different perspective on the hero's journey. Limited awareness of problem, increased awareness of need for change. As you look at this and just sort of read through these 12 steps, I'll give you a moment to pause this and read through it. But I want you to, as you read through it, would you just sort of ask yourself, who does this remind you of? So yeah, it could remind you of Luke, could remind you of Kelvin, could remind you of dozens of different people who have gone through this journey. For me, it reminds me of the student. They come in with a limited awareness of problem, and they have to overcome their fear. They work through until they reach mastery. And some of these might be, a stretch in the current way that they are stated, like big change with feeling of life and death. I don't know if any student really feels that in math class or any other class, but we can see that this is a process for them. And this process, notice who went through this in the movie. It was Luke. He's the hero. It's his journey. In this scenario that we have here, this is the student's journey. And too often we try to make it our journey, meaning we try to slay dragons for kids, right? So a problem pops up, and what we want to do almost automatically is help them. Jump in, save the day, show them how to do it, and reduce to a minimum the amount of struggle that they face. But that might not be such a good thing. Even if you think back to the movies, Yoda was sort of, hands off, and he said, this is kind of a journey you have to go through, and he really wanted to push Luke in that respect, but he never really slayed Luke's dragons for him. But how often do we do that for kids? Sometimes too often. So we want to be more like Yoda, a little bit less like Luke as the teacher. Let's push the kids, let's get them through their learning journey, and just be there to help facilitate. So, as you think about Kelvin, if this was Kelvin's journey, how did Kelvin go through the learning experience, and how was that different than what a typical American student might have gone through? I saw Kelvin finding a problem that interested him, that he found necessary to solve, and he went after that. After that problem, with a lot of tenacity. I mean, the kids, re-engineering batteries, reverse engineering, amplifiers, amazing. I know I wasn't doing that at his age. And so think about how we can recreate a Kelvin experience for a student. Now, I mean, we can't get them maybe out in the middle of a third world country with limited, limited electricity, but can we still create a scenario where they are perplexed, where they are intellectually stimulated? That's kind of what we want to do. So one of the things that we're going to do is appeal to their curiosity. Let's make them curious. We asked, how would it look like if Kelvin was in the American classroom? Kelvin might have been sat down and told, this is what you're going to study. You are going to study, pages 1 through 15 today about circuits, and you're going to answer questions 1 through 15 in the back. That is not every classroom. That might be, unfortunately, more classrooms than we would like to see, because that does not put the student in a situation where they're curious, where they're perplexed intellectually. So here's one example of something that might be perplexing to kids. You walk in and you see this thing. And I watched kids walk in and look at this, and this was my classroom a couple of years ago. Their eyes got big, and they thought, wow, they started asking questions right away. Press pause here and ask yourself, what questions arise for you? So questions for the students or questions for the adults that we had at at our professional development in June. How many are there? How many layers are there? How tall is it? How much does it weigh? Lots of different questions that kids or teachers wanted to answer. The minute they walked into my classroom and saw that, we started to build those questions build those questions together, write them on the board, and then just have them answer however they wanted to. Some kids wanted to count them one by one. And you might think that's a waste of time, but it's not if they eventually see, it is a waste of time for me to count every one of these. It's taking a long time. I wish there was a shortcut. If you got a kid asking for a shortcut, then basically you have them now asking you for math. Here's another one. We used to do a lot of product verification in class. This is cool, right? Kids love Diet Coke and Mentos. The thing explodes, they get excited, and so we go out and we launch some Diet Coke. Well, how tall is it? Kids would go crazy for this, and they would try to compare the height of the in this picture as we filmed it, the height of the geyser to maybe the height of the trash can or the height of the fence, and they would, through some, just maybe going up to the screen in class and using their fingers to count up, they would count it's 90 feet tall. Well, that obviously did not work. But what if and that's because, the trash can in the back is too far away. But maybe having this girl stand beside would be different. So getting them to explore, make their own mistakes, and in doing so, to be less helpful.